Hi, everyone. It's Paul Flynn here, our national treasure for the Ferrari Club of America. And I wanted to say hello to everybody. Hope you're doing well. And thank you for joining this series of interviews that we've put together exclusively for you club members on people who are in the Ferrari world of interest. And I am thrilled to say that we've got a tremendous guest today. He needs a little introduction. The introduction could go on forever, but let's just say this. He was a four-time IndyCar champion. He won the Indianapolis 500 in '69. He won the Daytona 500 2 years before that. And most notably for us F1 fans, he won the '78 World Championship. Please welcome Mario Andretti. Mario, how are you today?
Wonderful, Paul. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Well, it's great to have you on. It's not the first time that you and I have met. This was the first time. This is going back.
Wow. Yeah, we were really young then.
Yeah, I think it was around 1995. And you were sitting on a scooter at the Molson Indy in Toronto.
Yeah.
And it was like qualifying day, and I saw you over there, and like a million other fans said, "Hey, Mario, can I take a picture with you?" And you said, "Sure, come on over." So you don't know how bold I was. I think I've got my hand on your shoulder there and took that picture back in the 90s. But, you know, I kept it. I don't know if you've got a copy of it, but I kept it.
Of course I do.
And because it's special, and we know we have 6,700 members in the club here. I'm sure you, from one time or another, you've met many of them. So,
well, the Ferrari family is around the globe, and we all stick together, don't we? I mean, it's something very special.
Yep. So this is a Ferrari owners club. So a lot of the talk today, it would be great to talk about Ferrari quite a bit. I know there's a lot you could talk about Lotus and others as well. But we're Ferrari owners for the most part with street cars. Some of us have racing cars too. How many Ferraris and what kind of Ferraris have you had in the past, or do you have?
Oh, I had probably 6 Ferraris along the way. My favorite was, it's got to be the first one always because it was the '72 Daytona. As a matter of fact, after my '71, we had a couple of good races with Formula One with Ferrari, South Africa, and then I won both of the heat races in Ontario after that. But anyway, along the way, I did a few other races, Nürburgring and so on and so forth. But Mr. Ferrari offered me a drive, factory drive for the following year. And I couldn't do it. I was already committed. But and he says, by the way, he says, if you like, he said, I'll give you the car you won your first Formula One race with. And I said, like an idiot. and the production at that time was, actually, I said, I want to look at what's out there in the production. And they had the American production, and there was the Daytona, the new Daytona. It was first Daytona, I think, with the alloy wheels and so forth. I said, that's what I want. And he says, well, he said, sorry, I can't give you that one because that's not under my auspices. He says, because that's when they had sold to Fiat, to Agnelli and the group of Fiat group.
Yeah.
And, but anyway, Lord and behold, we went back and forth with telegrams, and I said, I'll offer you, actually I said, I'll give you $10,000 for it. And so, the following day, we accept. So they shipped the car over, and Luigi Chinetti, North America, they obviously had to clear it. And then Luigi said, oh, Mario, I said, from now on, I'm going to buy cars from you. He says, we pay $18,000 for that car. you know. And then he says, so anyway, but I love that car, obviously. He also being the first actual Ferrari that I owned. And I had several others, you know. I love the Boxer that I had also later on and so forth. But owning a Ferrari is always a great experience, you know, as you can imagine. So I can tell stories about that, but I don't think we have enough time. But anyway, it's always a wonderful experience.
Yeah, cool. Is there one that you haven't bought, a favorite Ferrari that's been produced that you said, wow, that would be a great car to own?
It has yet to be built.
Yeah, that's what Enzo always said.
That's why I said that.
So you mentioned South Africa. That was your first race and you won it for Ferrari in 71.
Yes.
What was it like for a kid born in Italy to win for Ferrari?
Well, Paul, you can just imagine, you know, when I was a youngster, just barely a teenager, I fell in love with the sport, and there's a good reason for it. I mean, you know, motor racing was so prominent in Italy because of Formula One was officially born 1950, and who was the first Formula One champion? Nino Farina, Alfa Romeo, and then Ferrari, Maserati, and you know, my idol of all time was Alberto Ascari, and again, the dream began when I first saw my very first Grand Prix with my twin brother Aldo in 1954 in Monza, and you know, that's where the impossible dream began. But Ferrari was first and foremost in my mind, you know, ultimately, and the first met Mr. Ferrari in 1969 at the 1,000 Ks in Monza. I was a teammate with Chris Amon. Why did I have to think about it? Chris Amon. And that's when I first met Mr. Ferrari and at the track. And then, of course, I always dealt with him directly, which was something extremely special to me. And mainly because you know, after there were some fatalities with Italian drivers, the Italian government was actually had a big criticism on Enzo Ferrari. You know, we're losing some of those champions, and he said, "I'm not going to hire any more Italians," you know, and so forth. So that's why he always had a translator or someone dealing with them directly, and so for the longest time, I was the only driver that really dealt with him directly. Believe it or not, even some of the later Italians, like you know, Giunti and so forth, you know, they had to go through Dr. Gozzi, you know, or Francolini and that sort of thing. So I hold those moments very dear, you know, that I could deal with the men directly.
And then at the behest of Mr. Ferrari, you returned in 1982 and you did the race in Monza, where you had a podium finish. That must have been very special for you as well, in front of the Tifosi.
Yeah, I mean, special, I don't even know if that describes it, but, you know, there were terrible moments. You know, they had a very tragic season, as you well know, you know, losing Jill and then later on Didier Pironi. And so he gave me a call. I was already out of Formula One, you know, in 82. And I, of course, you know, I was delighted to fill in for the last two races, you know, Monza included, Monza second last, and I arrived there like the week before, you know, because so I could test and get familiar with the car, and I did. I ran Fiorano. Actually, I arrived on Saturday. I was supposed to test all day Sunday, but I arrived there and we had lunch at the Cavallino, and then I said, I'm going to like to get fitted up, which was part of it. I said, after I got fitted up, I said, you know what, I'd like to take a few laps on the track, and I ran 87 laps that day. And right on the last run, for Gary, put the qualifying chip, in the engine. And I set a record there, if you're on it, lasted 8 years.
Wow.
That day. And so I felt good about the car, immediately. And so when we got to Monza, we were ready to go. And it was quite the battle. It was not easy, quite the battle, especially with was it Brazilian, Nelson Piquet.
Mm-hmm.
And he and I were trading back and forth, and finally I just made an adjustment in the end. But it was so incredible, you can imagine, satisfying to be able to do that. And in the race, I should have won the race. I mean, I had it in hand, and I lost power on the left bank. My turbocharger started going, I think it was 4 or 5 laps from the end. And I dropped back to third, unfortunately. But still, it was a podium, so it was very satisfying, as you can imagine.
And then, racing for Enzo was a limited time. How different was he compared to Colin Chapman, who you did quite a lot of racing with?
Well, two iconic personalities, no question about it. Quite different. I think the one, probably the biggest difference was that Mr. Ferrari was through and through, in his veins, was just racing. And Colin Chapman, he was definitely a racer, but he had some distractions. He started a car company, then he even had a boat company and so forth. And now and then, he would just go off and be distracted. That's why you look at his performance in the Lotus were like peaks and valleys, up and down. But so that's basically the difference. I mean, they were both personalities bigger than life, as you can imagine. You look at the record, you look what they accomplished. Colin Chapman was magic when it came to it was really, just thinking out of the box and still staying, within the rules to some degree, with his cars. And, it was fun to be able to just develop the ground effects, which was by accident, really. It was a design that he started, and we just really just discovered it as we were going on, and it was, it was really very challenging at one time, but very rewarding at the same time.
Yeah, revolutionary, really. Yep. So on that vein, the feel of the car, you started out on dirt tracks, and I'm sure you learned a lot about handling of a car on a dirt track, and then progressed through Champ Car and Indy Car, sports car. You did Le Mans, you obviously did F1, you did NASCAR. This concept of the feel of the car, how's that changed? How did that change over the years in terms of, they talk about the input of the driver and knowing the feel of the car?
Well, as much as things change, they remain the same as far as the driver's feel. I mean, the driver, the job is to feel the limit of the car and then try to understand what the car wants for balance and so on and so forth. Going back to there's nothing more different than, say, dirt track racing than, say, even Formula One. But I learned something, in dirt track racing, what you learn obviously car control, because you're always, you're basically steering with the throttle. And, but the thing about dirt track racing also is the fact that the conditions change almost every other lap, because the track conditions change, obviously, the way everybody's running. You're running high, low in the corners, looking for grip anywhere. And then you do the same thing. What that helped me was in rain events. In the rain, in Formula One or Indy cars, when we run the road courses. And by that, I mean, in rain events, conditions continuously change, as you can imagine. And you're always looking for grip. You're driving the corners, but totally opposite, the line through the corners. because all you're looking is for grip. And that's, that's where I learned. So you can see that one discipline helps the other in some respect. And I was always curious, about our sport is blessed with, different disciplines to the highest level, like you say, Formula One, Indy cars, NASCAR, stock cars and sports prototypes. And you can make a career and be satisfied in any of them. But my specialty was always open wheel single seaters, because that's, to me, is the purest form of the sport. But I was always curious as to what the other side was about. Sports prototypes are always exciting, obviously. Long distance races, you learn a lot through there about, how to really deal with a car, how to go fast without taking so much out of the car, be kind to the car and still be fast and all those things. But on the other side, I always, I was never satisfied, with what I had. And I felt there was always something to learn. But, you drive a stock car, it's something totally, totally different from a single seater, for instance. And there you learn, our progression from single seater to a stock car is you got to learn how to go fast by being slow. What does that mean? It means because we're so used to speed, we have a tendency to overdrive a stock car because you reach the limit much quicker. So you overdriving, you just waste time, you slide. Right. So you just got to learn, the limit of the grip and all that. So each, discipline has its nuances. And again, it was just a matter of, looking forward to the challenge. And I was all in for that. And I consider that, to me, the most satisfying part of my career, to be able to experience the different discipline at the highest level and win there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not just race there, win there, which I was very lucky to do so.
There aren't too many people who could say that. So you mentioned Chris Amon earlier. He wrote a book called 1967, which was all about the 1967 season in Formula One. And it was interesting that in that book, he peppered it with quotes from fictional characters from the movie Grand Prix, which came out around the same time. I absolutely love that movie Grand Prix.
I did too.
Yeah, that inspired my passion for Ferrari and motorsport. So there was a character in that movie, French driver Jean-Pierre Sarti. And there's a scene in the movie where he meets a photojournalist, Louise, and they're in this old museum in Monaco. And she's asking him questions about, what it's like. And she starts to talk to him about accidents and, fiery crashes that happen and so forth. And he says, when I see a fiery crash, I feel like I should pull the car over to the side of the track and walk away and quit the sport for what it does to our people. But I don't do that. Instead, I put my foot down hard to the floor because I know that all the other drivers are lifting their foot. And Louise says, what a horrible way to win. And his response is, there's no horrible way to win. There's just winning, which I thought was a fabulous line. Do you recall experiences where you've been in a race in a car and there's been some horrible crash and how you have to deal with that in the cockpit?
Too many of those, unfortunately. I lived through the eras of the 60s and 70s, where the sport was really progressing rapidly, but the safety aspect was not progressing as rapidly as maybe we could have hoped. And there were, just so many tragedies. Our sport suffered tremendously during those decades. And I was right in the middle of it. I lost some of my best friends and people that I admired, people that would have been champions for sure. And but here again, when you listen to those quotes, it rings a bell to some degree, because even in our time, if you dwelled on that negative, you didn't belong in the sport. Mm-hmm. And somewhere you had to be arrogant to some degree, quite honestly. And yeah, well, I was thinking in those terms, like you got to be thinking confidently that it's not going to happen to you, even though you know darn well that some things can happen that's not your fault. Get caught up in somebody else's mistake, get some equipment failure, suspension failure, whatever, something where you're a passenger. But if you're going to do this, if you're going to be in this business, you have to accept those potential risks. That's all there's to it. And but the only way you can function is to look at the bright side, look at the positive side of it, the satisfaction that it provides, and thinking that I don't want to do anything else. There's nothing else on this planet that I could be happy with doing as a profession. And that was me, 100%. And so I always said, I never had a plan B. And I did not. I didn't have a plan B to fall back to. We, as a family, almost lost my brother at the end of the very first season. So again, we paid a price to some degree. My younger son Jeff, he had to quit because of a terrible problem, that accident happened in '92 at Indianapolis, whereby there was suspension failure. Actually, a wheel hub broke, and he almost lost both his legs. And so on and so forth. So again, I take nothing for granted. I know how fortunate I've been. I know how fortunate my older son Michael has been also, to have a brilliant career. But again, the sport could be, and it was, cruel at times. But for me personally, it gave me just the ultimate satisfaction that I could have ever expected from my professional career.
So you put your foot down.
Damn right.
Yeah. So you're talking about Michael and Jeff, and now you got Marco also in racing for a while now. So 3 generations, I think a total of 8 members of the family are in racing. Yes. And, I'm up in Canada East. I'm the regional director here. I'm based in Toronto. And so for sure, I'm a hockey puck. I'm a hockey kid and grew up watching Gordie Howe play with his sons. He had the opportunity to play with Mark and Marty on the same team at one occasion. How does it feel for you to be involved and have your kids involved? And actually, you raced against Jeff and Michael at times.
And John, yeah. Actually, these are the proudest moments, quite honestly, as a family, because we have so many events that we can really brag about, quite honestly. And I'll just quickly go through that. For instance, in 1986 at the Pocono 500, it was a supporting event. And my younger son, Jeff, was driving that event. He was on pole and they won that race. For the 500, Michael was on pole and I won the 500. The 3 of us, I was clean house. It was 1991, right? Milwaukee, all Andretti podium. Michael won, nephew John second, I was third. Michael and I were on podium in an IndyCar race 15 times. And started first and second 5 times, started on the front row 10 times. There are so many, 91 and 92, 4 of us, the same family, started the Indy 500, which for 2 years in a row, and never happened before or since, family members. We have these stories, and they're so precious, you can imagine. So again, there was so much pride going on in this respect, within the family. Even though my brother, the twin brother Aldo, he had to retire early because of injuries. Yeah. He lived his life through his own sons, John, and then his grandson, Jarrett now. So he has third generation drivers, so do I. So as you can see, Aldo and I started this mess, and it continues. But yeah, we have so much to be thankful for, no question, as a family. And I cannot stress enough how much pride went along with that.
Yeah.
It still does.
Does it feel any different being a grandpa watching Marco than it was being a father watching the other two?
Well, it's pretty much the same. You feel, I can understand why my wife, obviously, what she was going through, because I always said, just, my wife was very stoic, she never expressed her emotions, but I know what was going on inside of her. And once I'm on the sideline watching them, I figure, oh man, because I'm the ultimate nervous Nelly, and because I know what they're facing, the competition, the pressure and everything else. But again, that's what it's a totally different feeling, as you can imagine. When I was on the track with them at the same time, I almost felt like, you almost feel like you have some control over, you know what I mean? I don't know. It's an abstract almost, but it's a feeling of like I was more confident. Oh yeah, we're okay. I know what's going on, and they do, and blah blah blah. But when you're on the sideline, you feel totally helpless. I can never watch a start for it. So I always look at the engineer's face, whether it's it's daunting sometimes.
Yeah, so they get more precious at each generation, but
True.
but at the same time, it's like you're reliving your career twice over. You've done it,
Yeah.
Your boys, and then with your grandson again. It's like start from the beginning and go through it again. Rookie skins and all that stuff. It's fun. It's great.
Yeah.
Yep. So you're involved with Circuit of the Americas as an ambassador, aren't you?
Well, officially I was at the beginning, it's, pretty much, I'm still a fan, of course, and I'll support in every possible way. I'm not officially, part of that, but I'm, again, it's a great facility. We're so fortunate to have the facility at that level, to host the USGP. It's permanent. And that in itself speaks volumes. There's going to be stability there. I know that they have, there's going to be a race, a Formula One race in Miami. But that's going to be on a temporary circuit, which is great. It's another event. But I'm a big fan of COTA. I've run there. I've run there with two-seater. I know the value. I know how much fun it is to drive around that course. And Formula One belongs there for sure.
Yeah, and Formula One, you feel belongs in America? There's a good future for it?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think I'm still waiting for the moment where we would have an American driver in Formula One. I think it would be huge. I think to really awaken the interest of the fan base that we have. I think the fan base in America is somewhat underestimated for Formula One, in my opinion. But I just need to be re-energized, and no better way than to have one of our own drivers representing this country, representing the flag with a top team, not just driving there, with it. It's got to be with one of the top three teams. Otherwise, just forget about it.
Yeah. And it's been a while since that's happened. I mean, American drivers have come and gone. Michael had his try with McLaren, Eddie Cheever with various teams, but it's been a while.
Well, yeah, I was the last one to win, a Formula One race. So that's it. I mean, it's our country is rich of a lot of talent, which has been overlooked, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And but again, now if we're going to have 2 Grand Prix, maybe there will be some interest in trying out. There's some really great young talents coming on in IndyCar that deserve to be looked at, you know, and one in particular was very, very young still, which is very important, you know, to get him there young, you know, which is Colton Herta. He's proven winner, and so he drives for Michael. And, you know, Michael has an option in his contract that if he gets a good Formula One offer of sorts, he would release him. So, you know, Michael understands the importance of Formula One as well for a driver. He's been there. And you know, I'm staying optimistic for the future in that respect. But I can say clearly that it would really mean a lot for the fan base to see one of ours, you know, just making US proud, you know, in Formula One.
Yeah. So our guys and gals are gathering in Sebring in November for an annual, what we call the annual experience or annual meet. And that's being put together now. And you raced endurance at Sebring. Any words of advice for the track at Sebring for those who are going on the track?
Well, I think notoriously, as we know, Sebring is very bumpy, which is, I think I always welcome that, but honestly, it's just something else to overcome that maybe you hope that some cannot. But nevertheless, that makes it not very forgiving, quite honestly. And I always said the big word of advice to me is to watch the last turn, which is turn 17, coming onto the pit straight, because it's a quick corner, but it's got a lot of undulations. And if you have power at the wrong time, you know, you'll swap ends quicker than you can think. And so this is one area I think that can really catch you out big time, because it's a fast, long radius corner. And but other than that, again, the track is very, very challenging, and I think it's a great track. And I think majority of the drivers that have really brought results there, they love it. I'm one of them.
Yeah. Well, we'll probably not take it as fast as you did, but we'll have a good time and experience it in great cars. So thank you for that advice. And thank you, Mario, for all the time that you've given us today. You know, I showed you this picture at the beginning. And, you know, when I look at this picture, I just don't think about, oh, it's a picture with Mario Andretti, the famous race car driver. I look at it and I say, this is a gracious man that he said, sure, come on over and take a picture, no problem. And it was wonderful. You're smiling. And I bet with our 6,700 members, there are hundreds of pictures like this on the walls and on the shelves, favorite spots where they put their memorabilia of you with them, and they value those pictures. But to me, the big thing about this picture, that when I think about it and think about you, is that just how gracious you are, and you proved it today by you know, accepting our invitation and coming and spending time with us today. So we greatly appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Paul. You're very, very kind. Thank you very much.
Have a great day, and we'll see you out at the track.
There you go. You bet.